Okay. So, hi. Welcome to Elite Dangerous. So, I've been kind of looking for a little bit of a project to mess with for a little while now, and I thought having a go at doing something spacey again would be kind of fun, and also just a chance to really just mess about with some editing tools again, because it's been a long while. So, after getting a little bit inspired by seeing some rather nice footage from a couple of YouTubers, and actually a brand new series being started out by this brand new sort of a brand new sort of beginner series that I saw on Twitter, being started by Sykes Plays, link below. I thought I'd just actually sit down and have a go at playing a game again, a space game again, and recording it. So, rather than trying to talk as I played, because I'm not going to lie, I was somewhat overwhelmed by this game initially, being much more of a simulator than most other games I've played. That is very cool. I thought a better way of going about it would be to actually go through, play a bit, and then actually record my thoughts after the fact. And sort of talk about more what was going on as we were playing. Part of this, of course, was also just to make sure that I could record in a nice, sort of clean and efficient way. So, yeah. That is pretty.
Remarkable, isn't it? For so long, humanity gazed up at the stars in wonder. We're not distracted by one of Earth's many wars. The structure and is designed for the novice pilot.
So, I have to admit, the biggest thing that's kind of thrown me off from sort of new experience is actually controls. And that's because I grew up playing Wing Commander games. Now, in the classic Wing Commander games, rather than having your roll tied on your I'm trying to think which axis we're actually working with here. But when you moved your stick to the left and right, rather than rolling, you would actually hit your rudder. You would basically yaw left and right, which is very different, and it actually made in some ways for a sort of more stable control pattern, but that obviously isn't the case here for Elite, because again, Elite is feels more like a simulator. And coming up, obviously, we've got this whole thing with the flight test, and it's not pretty. So, flying my way in here is probably where my piloting skills may quickly become apparent at this stage of things. Being so used to turning my stick left and right to effectively just move the ship left and right, with older sort of games, as mentioned, Wing Commander, made actually this whole sort of close-in flying sort of obstacle course quite the challenge. It took me a little minute to realize that on the hands-on sorcerer flight stick that I'm using, that I do have an extra control, like rather than having to twist the stick, which I was doing for the majority of this. There's a button on the throttle which allows me to actually sort of control that, and it took a little time to get through things. This is taken at extreme slow speed with lots of unnecessary overcorrection, and this does go on for a few minutes. All that aside, how am I actually finding this, or how did I find this? This was actually interesting. I found it problematic, as you can probably tell. Trying to get used to a control system I'm very unfamiliar with. The idea of having to obviously roll, then pitch for turning is something I'm more akin to in flying games. I've dabbled with it in War Thunder and so on forth. But even there, outside of its more simulatory modes, you never really have to deal with this. So in a lot of ways, this is my first time actually having to take this kind of flying into account. And at least in this situation, it felt tricky and a little bit unnatural, even though arguably it is a little bit more natural, in so much that it's more like a plane control as opposed to space.
But use it wisely.
Few things I did like. I really like the idea of there being this sweet spot on the throttle, where you've got more, where it's like your ideal point of maneuverability versus speed. That I like. And though it doesn't come up really here, I like that there's a similar position when flying in reverse. I think that's very neat and very clever.
Target the beacon before we continue.
So there was a few minutes here where I was literally scouring my flight stick to try and find button 3. I eventually found it, located on the front of the stick. So, mild delay as I tried to figure that out. So, having finally figured out how to target a thing by pressing a button that I couldn't see because I'm dumb.
When you're ready, throttle up.
Super Cruise.
Super Cruise.
Now, this is very cool, but also a little tricky to work out. At least again on a new player perspective. And this, I think, is very much where Elite's kind of hard skill cap kind of got the better of me. Now, admittedly here, the game did everything for me. But later on, you will see some rather spectacular overshoots. Not really understanding how managing your speed in Super Cruise did throw me off, and I didn't really figure that out until a little bit of experimentation later on. Even now, I'm still very bad at it. Quite easily overshooting everything I try to get to 2 or 3 times before actually arriving at target.
Astronomical bodies have a gravitational effect on the FSD, reducing your ship's speed. The closer the body, the greater the effect.
So, onto some shooting. Now, again, this is something that... obviously, there are inherent mechanics to Elite that I just haven't experienced in other games. And I did kind of like this idea. Having to deploy your weaponry, managing these groups and things. This I like. It does add on that extra level of hands-on mechanism, which is making this game feel so appealing and why I want to kind of mess around with it and things. I like that the tutorial goes out its way to tell you, right, here's how you scan. You want to scan targets first, and it kind of puts an emphasis on that, because that's something that kind of carries into the game proper, from what I can judge. You've got this whole concept of loading up having your weapons on groups as well, which, again, I from what I can tell is a large part of it, and the tutorial is going out its way to give me that early, even if I am so bad at pointing my ship at things. In contrast to trying to shoot at like stationary targets, once we started getting these mobile drones in place, and I started messing with these and having to go after them, I actually found things a little bit easier. The controls started to feel a little bit more natural. A big part of this, I suspect, is got to do with the fact that we have these wonderful gimbaled guns, which, oh, without these I would be in a bad state. And I will say, the visual of seeing the other ship firing off all these retro thrusters all over the place as it maneuvers is very cool. Wonderful. It obviously something so intrinsic to the game, but actually seeing it on your target like that is fantastic. Even if it was an unshielded drone. Of course, eventually, the game has to let things shoot back at you, and I don't know. I think the controls started finally gelling. I think. When you have something to try and pursue and manage, flying a bit more like a plane it felt slightly more natural, even if I wasn't very good at it. I felt like I had a better idea on how I was meant to move to pursue this combat drone, try to keep him off my back, and also try to avoid his fire. Even, you know, that wasn't necessarily something I think was too important in this scenario, but, you know, it was at this point I started spotting the second sweet spot for the throttles when working in reverse to try and take advantage of what appeared like a tighter turning circle, even though I was potentially moving slower, but potentially a way of getting my, you know, guns on the target a little quicker. I may very well be wrong in that. Throughout this fight, I was trying to, initially at the very least, focus on trying to use the right weapon for the right sort of defense and things, but it took a moment of, oh wait, there's no point in that. In this scenario, I'm not trying to preserve multi-cannon ammo, clearly. Preserving that didn't really make sense, so it was just a case of pull the trigger. Having managed to vanquish some basically unmanned targeting drones designed to die, time to have a look at moving between systems. So this was actually, it's probably the easiest part of moving around, which is, you know, a little bit refreshing. As far as sort of getting between systems, I've always been used to sort of EVE Online system where you're traveling to a gate. So I have no doubt that there is actually a much higher skill cap hidden within this game relating to this. Big Stargate vibes throughout. It has that sort of, you know, jumping through the tunnel kind of thing that we got in a lot of the seasons once they started getting their hands on ships, which felt really cool. And it does a very good job of giving that sense of speed, and then suddenly sun, which is a very cool thing to park out at. So, having gotten to this stage, this kind of really was the end of the tutorial in a lot of ways. One thing that I didn't really get to experience in this was trying to do manual control in Super Cruise, and not quite yet having to plot my own journeys, which I have to admit I would have liked to have gotten a little sooner, if that makes sense at all. I can understand why it's not in this tutorial, but it is sort of in the game proper, and I suppose we'll talk about it when we come to that, if I come to that. So it's really just a case of enjoying the trip back to our new home, which appears to be Silo Station? Silo Station? Kalo Station? I'm so bad at pronunciations. Basically docking up. So yeah, this has basically been a first little look at Elite Dangerous, basically through the lens of the tutorial, for all intents and purposes. Did I enjoy it? Yeah, I think I did. I think I was quite overwhelmed, if I'm to be genuinely honest, but not in a bad way, more in a I am unfamiliar with this way. And I think the tutorial definitely went out of its way to help me try to get used to that idea. Would I have liked a little bit more? Well, yeah, I've said a few times, I think I would have liked to have been able to have a go at manually piloting, but I can understand why that may not be available, because it's still something I'm trying to figure out. So, as we basically now get in and again have docking done for us automatically, basically going to wrap up here, and it'll be probably a little time before I try recording again. I think I'm probably going to have a good try at the alternate scenarios. I did pick up Horizons when I picked this up, so I do have like the planet-side stuff to mess around with, which I think could be quite interesting. So yeah, until next time, folks.
Congratulations, Commander. Your evaluation has been successful, and a license is being assigned to you as I speak. We just need to finalize your credentials. Enter the hangar to exit this evaluation.
Please submit a request before entering the docking bay.
It's time to blaze your own trail across the galaxy. The manner in which you do so